And we have a beautiful saying in Hebrew. The Jewish people kept the Shabbat, the 7-day Shabbat, and the biblical holidays, and the Shabbat and the biblical holidays kept the Jews, preserved the Jews.
I'm so pleased to introduce you today to someone I consider to be very wise. I've been following his writings and interviews for years. Joining me today is historian Dr. Gershon Nerel. Dr. Nerel has researched the phenomenon of Jewish believers in Jesus in the land of Israel, and he completed his research at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. In response to many comments on my videos, the question I'm bringing to him in this video is the people of Israel today truly the direct continuation of the biblical people of Israel?
We live now in the state of Israel. It is now 2024. We are in the middle of the war going on against all the enemies of the state of Israel. Actually, the state of Israel is fighting, is battling against 7 arenas, with 7 directions of attacks coming against the state of Israel. So when we talk about Israel, my understanding about the special place of Israel in history and why are 7 fronts in which Israel is fighting, attacking such a small nation in such a small piece of territory. Why? Why is Israel always in the focus? Why is Israel always interesting the world, not just in 1 minute or another minute? Why is the people of Israel, the land of Israel, in the focus of the nations? Why are they so much interested? Because Israel, in my understanding, has a special place according to the Bible. I believe in the Bible, in the Old, I don't like to say so much Old, but I prefer to say the Tanakh, the Hebrew Tanakh, which is the Torah, the Pentateuch, the prophets and the writings, and the New Testament. I believe in the Tanakh, in the New Testament, and from the content of the Tanakh and the New Testament, I can understand very clearly who is Israel, what is Israel, what is the task of Israel in world history. And I personally, according to the Bible, have no doubt that modern Israel is the continuation of ancient Israel, of biblical Israel. Of course, there is a gap of about 2,000 years that the Jewish people, that Israel was not in the land, that the Jewish people did not have sovereignty in the land, that the Jewish people are returning. We are still in the process of returning to the land. And this restoration, this return of the Jewish people to the land, in my eyes, is an absolute truth. It is a special fulfillment of prophecy. It is a special indication, a special message, both for the Jews and for the other nations, that someone is controlling history. Someone is directing the developments of history. And I believe that the people of Israel that were kept in the diaspora outside of the state of Israel, they were kept by the God of Israel, the Holy One of Israel, during 2,000 years. And now, during the past 200 years, they are coming back slowly. We are facing a very unique situation that now, during the ongoing war of the state of Israel, in 7 fronts, tens of thousands of Jews are returning to the land. during the wartime. This is an exceptional phenomenon. And this is a big miracle. And this is really the fulfillment of biblical prophecy that the God of Israel, the same God who chose Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he is bringing his people back to the land in spite of the war that is going on, in spite of the hatred. But anti-Semitism around the world is pushing the Jews to coming back to the ancient land of the fathers, of the patriarchs, of the prophets, of the apostles, of the first apostles of the Lord Yeshua. So this is a big miracle. And one argument of the enemies of Israel is that modern Israel is not the continuation of biblical ancient Israel. This is a misleading argument. This is a misleading saying, because the people of Israel were kept miraculously during 2,000 years for these times. And why are the Jewish people coming back to this land? Why is the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, bringing them back to this land? Because we are waiting for the return of the Messiah, for the coming of the Messiah. We have the big promise that the Lord Yeshua, who came the first time to this land, is soon going to come back to this land, to Jerusalem, to rule from Jerusalem on the world. And he will make a new world order. This is my deep faith that the Messiah, the Lord Yeshua, is coming back to rule for 1,000 years, the period which is called the millennium, 1,000 years. And he will rule from Jerusalem, and this will be the real Messianic time, which the prophet Isaiah speaks about, the prophet Micah speaks about, details which we read about in the book of Revelation, that the Messiah will rule in the third temple from Jerusalem, and he will make new rules, new order for everyone. Not everyone will like it. Not everyone will like the rule of the Messiah in this land, in this earth. But I believe this is going to happen very soon as part of the fulfillment of the end-time prophecies. So these are great hopes, these are great expectations about the coming, the return, the second coming of the Lord Yeshua, and what will happen in this earth. In the book of Revelation, for example, we read that during the 1,000 years of the Messiah ruling from Jerusalem, Satan will not be free. Satan will be bound. He will not be able to tempt, to destroy people. It will be a new situation, a real new situation. And this, for me, is an amazing comfort in the big chaos in which we live today. We live in such a big chaos. We live in such a big hatred, in such a big confrontations between people, wars and fightings. But we have the Messianic hope of the Messiah coming, ruling, setting new rules on this planet Earth. And then, after the 1,000 years, we have further developments which are clearly written in the book of Revelation. I do know that many people say that modern Israel is not the continuation of ancient Israel. They argue this because there were some assimilations, there were some mixture of Jews and non-Jews. But this is not troubling me. This is not a problem for me. Because, for example, when I read in the book of Exodus, in the Torah, in the Tanakh, that the people of Israel came out from Egypt, also all kinds of other people joined them. It was not just a pure blood of the Jews. And also today, even though, yes, there are mixed marriages, but those who join Israel, those who marry with the Jews, they actually pragmatically, they join Israel in the way that Ruth the Moabite did. They join the people, they join the land, they live here with the good and the bad in the country. But I think it is a huge miracle that the Jewish people were kept in the diaspora of 2,000 years. What kept them? The Jews kept the Torah. The Jews went to the synagogues. The Jews were reading the portions of the prophets on Shabbat. The Jews kept the biblical holidays. We have the biblical holidays in chapter 23 in the book of Leviticus, in the Torah, in the Pentateuch. And we have a beautiful saying in Hebrew. The Jewish people kept the Shabbat, the 7-day Shabbat, and the biblical holidays, and the Shabbat and the biblical holidays kept the Jews, preserved the Jews. And the Lord Yeshua, the Almighty, He made sure that Israel will be in a way kept separate. Israel, the Jews, were always kept separate because most of the Jews, they refused to assimilate among the nations. They kept to themselves, they kept their scripture, they kept their holy scripture, they kept their Bible. And they believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they never forgot Jerusalem. They always longed to come back to Jerusalem, to come back to this land. This is so much opposite to what we talk about the Arabs. The Arabs, surely the Muslim, they have no real connection to this land. We have a connections of about 4,000 years since the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to this land, the land of Israel, the promised land. This is the promised land promised by the Lord Jehovah to Israel. And from the Bible, I know that Israel is not better, is not a superior nation to other nations. No. Israel is not superior to other nations. Israel is a tool to bless other nations.
With me today is the Israeli historian Dr. Gershon Nerel. Dr. Nerel has researched the phenomenon of Jews who believe in Jesus in the land of Israel, and he completed his research work at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. The question I will be asking him today comes from you, the viewers. Yes, I read all the comments you send me on the channel, and I will gradually try to respond to everyone, either in writing or in video form. So please keep writing comments and engaging in an open and respectful discussion on my channel. I am happy to hear from you. So my question and the viewer's question for you, Dr. Nerel, is, why did God choose the people of Israel specifically?
The issue of election, the election of Israel, I believe that the people of Israel, the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, was elected, was chosen to be a separate nation according to the promises given about 4,000 years ago to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the patriarchs of the people of Israel, exactly as we read in the book of Genesis. And I accept the details, the history mentioned in the book of Genesis. the Lord of heaven tells Abraham, your seed will be like the stars of the heaven. Your seed will be like the sand on the seashore. I will multiply you. I will make you a big nation. Why? Why? There is a purpose. One purpose is to keep the Hebrew language. The Hebrew language, which I understand, is the language spoken by the angels who spoke to Mary, to Joseph in the Gospels. The Hebrew language was kept by the Jewish people because they read their Torah, their Pentateuch, their Tanakh in Hebrew. The Hebrew language is a very important factor. So this is one reason that the seed of Israel is kept. I want to emphasize that this is not the seed of Ishmael. This is the seed of Isaac and Jacob. The seed of Ishmael, they received their own promises. They were not forgotten. The seed of Ishmael received promises in other places, but not in this small, tiny piece of land in which we live here between the river and the sea. This small, tiny piece of land was given to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in order that the Messiah will come from Israel. The Messiah who said about himself, the Messiah, the Lord Yeshua, who is known as Jesus, he said authoritatively, divinely, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He brought to this world the way, the truth, the life in Jerusalem, in Judea, in the Galilee. He was teaching in this land, in the land of the Jews. In the book of Acts, for example, when the Apostle Peter speaks to the house of Cornelius, the Roman centurion, Peter says, the land of the Jews. This is the land of the Jews. And also when the angel speaks to Joseph and Mary and tells them to go to Egypt because King Herod was looking for the children, the angel says in the book of Matthew, go and come back to the land of Israel. In the New Testament, this is the land of Israel. So the people of Israel were chosen that the Messiah will come through them from the Jewish people and bring a big light to the entire world, to the pagans. Until the Lord Yeshua came to this world, all the nations were pagans, worshipping idols of stone, of metal, of wood, worshipping idols of lying, idols of lust, the opposite of the truth. And here the Lord Yeshua comes and he brings this big light, this big hope, this big salvation, and the big atonement for sins through Israel, from Israel to the whole world. I am sure that the people of Israel were chosen to be a unique, a special nation, because through the Jews, the Lord of the universe was speaking to the world. He was not speaking to the world from the big empires of Greece, of Rome, and the other empires. And that's why he decided to promise this land to the Jews. This land had to be promised to the Jews, and the Lord says, I vow to give this land to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I vow, and the Lord will keep his word. I have no doubt. So why is only Israel chosen to be something special? Because they are a tool. Israel is a tool in the hands of the Lord, in the hands of the Messiah. And that's the way I see that. Otherwise, I cannot see any reason for choosing Israel to be a special people, because Israel is not better than any other nation. They are chosen for a task. They are a tool for the great plan, the great historical developments of the creator of this world. I hear people saying that the God of heaven, he could have chosen another nation to be a tool in order to bring the message of the Messiah to the world. But I am answering with another question. Who are we to criticize the Lord of the universe, the creator of everything, whom to choose? He decided to choose Abraham 4,000 years ago because of his faith, because of his faithfulness, because he stood in the test. Abraham stood in the test of willingness to sacrifice his own beloved son Isaac, because this was the request of his Lord Jehovah. He was full of faith. Because of his faith, because of his huge faith, he received the promise that his people will be chosen. His people will go through 400 years of slavery in Egypt, but there is a big hope. And they received the Torah, they received the Pentateuch. Sadly, the Torah is interpreted in different translations as the law, only the law. Torah is not just the law. Torah means teaching. Teachings about many things, teaching about the creation of the universe, teaching about the election of Israel, teaching about the suffering of Israel for 40 years in the desert. And, of course, the Torah. Israel received the Torah with many social benefits. But even before I go into the social benefits, which the poor and the suffering are receiving according to the Torah, I'm talking about the ethics, the moral that the Torah introduces, the Ten Commandments. This is something huge. All nations accepted the Ten Commandments. All nations know that the Torah is the basis for the moral, for the ethics of the world. So the Torah is amazing. The Bible, the prophecies, and then the New Testament, the Gospels, in my eyes, they really reveal to us the answers to such questions. They tell us who is the Messiah, why did he come, why? Because through him we have atonement for sins. Through him we have a great light and a hope and joy. Through him, I find the answers to my questions. That's how I came to believe in the Lord Yeshua. Because in him, I found the answers to the questions I was asking. And from the Bible, I know that Israel is not better, is not a superior nation to other nations. No. Israel is not superior to other nations. Israel is a tool to bless other nations. And Abraham, the patriarch, was told, those who bless you, I will bless, and those who curse you will be cursed. I myself have been in the Yom Kippur War more than 50 years ago, and I could see that the protection of the Lord of God over Israel was and is miraculous. It's a big miracle.
I'm so pleased to introduce you today to someone I consider to be very wise. I've been following his writings and interviews for years. Joining me today is historian Dr. Gershon Nerel. Dr. Nerel has researched the phenomenon of Jewish believers in Jesus in the land of Israel, and he completed his research at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. In response to many comments on my videos, the question I'm bringing to him in this video is the replacement theology genuinely valid?
I must say that I totally reject the understanding, the interpretation of replacement theology, as if as if the nations of the world, or even the Christians of the world, or the churches in the world, as if they replace Israel. No, absolutely not. Because Israel has a special calling which is not for the non-Jews. It is not for the Gentiles. The Gentiles, they should do their own calling, and Israel should remain with its own calling in the promised land to the Jews. And I have no doubt that the replacement theology is wrong, is misleading, and sadly, many try in the world today to resurrect the theology of replacement. This is wrong. This is totally wrong. Israel is still valid. The promises to Israel are still valid. They are not given to the other nations. The promises to Israel in the Bible are valid. And also the curses remain valid because Israel suffered a lot. Because in the Torah it's very clearly said, if you follow my way, Israel, you will be blessed. If you don't follow my way, the Lord says to Israel, you will suffer, and suffer heavily. And we know the sufferings that the Jews have suffered even in the last century, if I mention only the Holocaust. But the Jews suffered much earlier, during the Crusades and other persecutions. The 400 years in slavery in Egypt, I have no doubt, Israel is chosen as a tool in the hands of the Lord of the universe. I understand the Father in heaven, as we say in the Lord's Prayer, our Father in heaven, He gave everything to His Son, the Lord Yeshua, and the Lord Yeshua controls the universe. I have no doubt that He keeps Israel, He uses Israel, He blesses Israel. I always say that this is a huge miracle, how we can fight against all these Arab nations, against missiles. I myself have been in the Yom Kippur War more than 50 years ago. And I could see that the protection of the Lord of God over Israel was and is miraculous, is a big miracle. As far as I can understand, the Jews have their own calling to remain Israel, to keep the Hebrew language, and to remain a place for the returning Messiah, for the coming back of the Messiah, and to keep Jerusalem. I believe Jerusalem must be Jewish. And what is the role of the non-Jews, of the other nations, of the Gentiles? They also have a role. They also have a task. First of all, they should read the scriptures that came from Israel. They have a text which they should take seriously, very seriously. The text coming through the Jews, through the Jewish prophets, through the Jewish patriarchs, through the Messiah, the Lord Yeshua of Israel and of all the nations. But the key to understand history, to understand the developments, to understand the meaning of our life is through Israel. Only when people from the nations, from around the world, look at what's happening with Israel, in the land of Israel, they will understand the plans of God. They will understand the fulfillment of prophecies given more than 2,000 years ago. For example, Isaiah, he lived 2,800 years ago. The prophet Daniel, 2,500 years ago. They have big prophecies. The Gentiles, the nations, they have to learn them, to understand them. And yes, to pray for Israel, to pray for the Jews. Yes, to pray and to love the Jewish people, not to hate them. It is demonic. It is satanic to persecute and to make troubles to the Jews. This is satanic. The Gentiles should love the Jews, should bless them, and then they will be blessed as well. They will be rewarded. They will get a blessing from the Lord of the universe. So, all together, Jews and non-Jews, they have each one his plan in God's grand plan, master plan, if we can say so. I like to give the example of a couple. In a couple, the husband has his place, the wife has his place. The wife cannot replace the husband. The husband cannot replace the wife. The same way with the Jews and the Gentiles. The Gentiles should not replace the Jews should not replace the Gentiles. And this is very important in my eyes. I hear the arguments, which is an old argument, about 2,000 years old, that we should not love the Jews because they murdered the Messiah. But this is not the role of the Gentiles to judge the Jews. They will have their judgment from their Father in heaven. But this is an anti-Semitic slogan, murderers of the Messiah, or even something more crazy, God murderers. The Messiah is the Son of God, not the God. God is the Father in heaven. We must always make the clarification that God the Father was not crucified. It's the Son of God who was crucified in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. So we must be very careful. It's not the task of the Gentiles to judge the Jews. And this is just an excuse, a pretext to hate the Jews and to persecute the Jews by saying that they are God killers, what is known as deicide. Deicide. This is wrong. This is demonic, this is satanic. This should not happen, because the Jews are chosen. It is written about the Jewish people that they are even the apple of the eye of the Lord, because they are precious. They have sinned, and the one who should punish them is the God of the universe, not the Gentiles. Not the Gentiles. That's not their role. Sadly, the people of Israel rejected the Messiah Yeshua 2,000 years ago because they did not recognize him. This, in my understanding, was the fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah in chapter 6, where he says, they will have ears and they will not hear. They will have eyes and they will not see, and they will not have understanding. Sadly, our people did not see and did not hear, did not accept the message of the Lord Yeshua 2,000 years ago. And sadly, because of the arrogance of many Jews, arrogance, we are suffering until today. Look what happened to us at the Yom Kippur War 51 years ago in Sinai and in the Golan Heights, and about a year ago in October 2023, because our arrogance, big arrogance, pride, we did not recognize the plans of the enemy to attack Israel and to do the horrible things they did to the Jewish people, to the Israelis. So, yes, Israel must humble itself. Israel, like every person, Jew or non-Jew, we must come humbly, meekly before the Lord and acknowledge that we are sinners and to ask for forgiveness. And it is the same for Jew and non-Jew. I personally have no doubt that the territory with its boundaries, the boundaries are given in the Torah, belong only to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
I interviewed the Israeli historian Dr. Gershon Nerel. I asked him, does the land of Israel belong to the people of Israel? This is what he answered.
The Lord says, I vow to give you this piece of land. Who can say anything against this vow of the Lord of the universe? The Torah, the 5 books, of the Pentateuch, they are valid according to the teaching of the Lord Yeshua in the Gospels, in the New Testament, and the promises of the land, of the territory, of the borders to Israel. Surely from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River, surely Judea, the Galilee, surely the Sharon, surely the Negev. All these are parts of Israel, not to any other people. And I certainly do not believe that there can be two states in this piece of land. This piece of land, this territory was promised totally clearly to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the Lord will do that. I was a teenager when the 6-day war broke out. In 3 fronts, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Israel conquered biblical territory. Nobody expected this. But suddenly, the territory of the state of Israel was doubled. Now we have just the core of this promised land, the land promised to the Jews, Judea, Samaria, and the Golan. Sadly, so many people, especially Muslim and Arab, they want to take and reduce the territory of Israel. But our country, our state is so small that on the maps, the name is outside the borders of the land, of the territory. It is so small. So how can there be 2 states? This is absolutely against the Bible, against the biblical promises, the divine promises of the God of Israel, and against logic, against any perspective of logic. This is impossible. But the Lord, He is mighty. It is true that there is a saying that Satan is mighty, but the God of Israel is almighty. The God of Israel is almighty, and He will keep His word. And He will keep His promises to His people. I have no doubt about that. I have no doubt that we are already living in the last part of the last days. We are very close to the return of the Messiah.
I interviewed the Israeli historian Dr. Gershon Nerel. I asked him, are we currently living in the end times? This is what he answered.
What are the last days? The end times. They are the time of the fulfillment of promises connected to Israel. Israel is the key to understand world history. World history is understood by what is happening to the people of Israel and the land of Israel. One of the huge signs of the fulfillment of prophecies of the end times is the Jewish people coming back to this land. The prophet Ezekiel has an amazing prophecy about the dry bones, that they will come to life. Those who have visited in Yad Vashem, in Jerusalem, in the Holocaust Museum, they could visualize the dry bones of Israel. But not only this, the dry bones of Israel after 2,000 years to come back to the land of the patriarchs, to the land of the apostles, to the land of the Messiah. This is biblical Zionism, the fulfillment of these prophecies in the end time. And the climax of the end time is, in my understanding, the return, the coming back of the Messiah Yeshua to this world, not as a baby as He came the first time, not in weakness, but in glory, in majesty, and in power. He will come back to rule, and those who have pierced Him in this land, they will weep and cry and weep and cry and recognize the Messiah. This will be a big revolution. I'm waiting for the fulfillment of this revolution in these end times. We must realize, we must understand that we are living already in the end of the end times, because we can see that all the nations are preparing to come against Israel. As the prophet Zechariah says in chapter 14, that the Lord Jehovah, He will bring the nations against Jerusalem. It is so easy today to visualize this, to understand this, that all the nations will come against Israel. There will be a big battle, terrible battle. But then the Lord Yeshua will intervene. He will intervene with His divine power. He will come on the Mount of Olives, Jerusalem. And then we will see that great things are ahead of us, and we live in unique times. So the Lord teaches us, the Lord actually warns us to be clever and not foolish, to watch, to pray, to be ready, to live holy lives, because the time of His coming is very close.